What if you had an AI software that could uncover your next best client? One of the things I love about Futureproof is that it's a place where emerging finance and tech companies collide. Welcome back to Do Business, Do Life. I'm Brad Johnson, and today we're sharing a conversation I had with Eden Ovadia, one of the founders of FINNY, live at Futureproof. A little background on FINNY. At just over a year old, they recently won a Wealthy Award for marketing and automation and have raised $6.5 million through Combinator, one of the most notable startup incubators in existence. And in this episode, we dig into the problems FINNY is helping solve with AI. Imagine being able to target prospects based on their most recent Google search history. Or maybe you'd rather target your next mailer to Lamborghini owners who happen to love red wine. FINNY is working to make this a reality. And if you've ever hit that point where you feel like you're working harder versus smarter, this conversation's for you. All right, let's dive in. Welcome to another episode of Do Business, Do Life. I'm here with Eden Ovadia.
Yes.
Welcome.
Thank you. Excited to be here.
This is not normal for me. Based out of Kansas, I don't normally do interviews right here beachside. So thanks for carving out the time to have a conversation.
Yeah, there are a lot of worse places to film a podcast than on the beach along the Pacific Coast Highway. So this is a beautiful area.
Yeah. Well, let's dive in. I know our time is limited. So you co-founded FINNY. And what's wild is you only started in May of 2024, and you've already done a lot of things a lot of people have never done that build businesses. So you've won a Wealthy. Congratulations.
Thank you.
So that was in what category? Marketing automation.
Marketing automation. So if you're a wealth manager looking for marketing automation, you are talking to the number one Wealthy winner 2025.
You know who your audience is, obviously, because that's checking the box for all of them. So we're going to get into organic growth and how your company is changing the game on that from a technology standpoint. Also, it's kind of fun. So you were founded in May of 2024. By December of 2024, you had already raised $6.5 million in a seed round. And we're part of the incubator Combinator, which is probably one of the most well-known incubators in the world. Yep. So you've done some cool things. So we should probably get into that.
It's been a crazy year. I also got married this year, so I've lots of change in the last 12 months. Yes, thank you.
Well, let's talk about organic growth. Obviously, you're doing that with a technology-forward approach. So, Eden, how do you go about that? What's kind of the thesis?
Yeah. And maybe I'll start with how I even came about this problem, because that drives a lot of the thesis. Prior to starting FINNY, I was in the private equity sector doing a lot of work on M&A acquisitions in the inorganic growth space. So for wealth managers who are buying and rolling up practices, I got firsthand viewership of how expensive inorganic growth was. And just I think in 2024, there was about $500 billion spent in rolling up and purchasing other RAs. And so all that money comes with heavy expectations of growth. And so the writing was on the wall when I was coming at it from the investor perspective. Just in 2022 alone, we had been advising on a ton of acquisitions, and then the market took a dip. And all of a sudden, the firms we were underwriting with 10, 15% year-over-year growth, when you stripped out market growth, or when market growth was no longer given, most of these firms were actually stagnating or flatlining or declining. And so it became very clear. It felt like in 2022, the industry took a step back and said, we have an organic growth problem after years and years of just being driven by market growth. And so coming from that side of the industry, I thought that we can use some of the new technology that was coming out, so data, large language models, to go about the process of client acquisition in a much more data-driven way. And so how can we apply AI and this new technology to give advisors the tools they need to find and attract new clients that they can serve better than anyone else? And that was really the thesis behind FINNY.
What's very interesting about your thesis. Number one, I share it. I'm on board with that. So it was literally a year ago, out here at Futureproof, I sat in on Joe Duran's session, and he talked about all of these crazy valuations. If you look at the math behind it, to your point, very expensive, flat if it weren't for market growth.
Yep.
And also they're buying a depreciating asset because they have an aging clientele that's starting to take money back out, not just accumulation, right?
That's right.
So let's get into the thesis. How are you starting to fix that issue from an RIA perspective?
Yeah, and just to add to that point, advisors that can figure out how to grow and build their own growth engine are seeing such significantly higher multiples on what they could sell their own business for. It's the number one factor that'll drive multiples is your own organic growth. And so even if inorganic growth is the goal, focusing on organic growth will pay off for itself multiple times over.
If you can give us a range of firm with organic growth, what's the pop in multiple there? I know it's going to depend on a lot of different factors, but what are we talking about there?
Yeah, I mean, you can see like 12 to 14x EBITDA when you're growing really, really quickly, which is pretty insane compared to like half of that if you have like regular or like flatlining growth. So it's pretty significant. And then a lot of firms, if you've seen one RA, you've seen one RA. So I don't want to speak in like just like broad trends, but I think every firm will see different types of organic growth weighted differently, but the firms that have been able to build their in-house growth engine that is scalable will then get rewarded the most for that, because that's what private equity wants to see. They want to see if you can put $1 in, get $10 out.
Mm-hmm. So organic growth, there's a lot of RIAs, advisors out there, they probably have different definitions for that. How would you define organic growth?
Yeah, so organic growth for me is net new assets, whether that's through client acquisition, so net new clients, or bringing on net new assets from existing clients, so expanding share of wallet. FINNY, I will say, focuses more on that first bucket, so how do you bring on and attract new clients? And then sneak peek, in the future, we're also going to be helping advisors retain and bring on new assets from their existing client base.
Very cool. Well, let's get into we've talked about the why.
Yeah.
Let's get into a little bit of the how, if you're cool with that. So how is FINNY going about doing this?
Yeah, so we start with data. FINNY has a database of nearly everyone in North America over the age of 18, so 300 million records. It's updated daily with about 6 billion data points. And so if you are an advisor logging into FINNY, you can go into FINNY, create an account, and you can say, hey, FINNY, help me find people who went to my high school, are business owners with over $5 million of revenue, and are looking up exit planning keywords online. So it's you can get really, really specific.
You can literally get into their search history?
Through cookie data.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I'll admit, prior to getting into this industry and starting this company, I had no idea the amount and the depth of information that was available, both publicly available and to license and purchase, we do both of those things. And so it is an astounding amount of data we can aggregate about people without them necessarily signing up for FINNY. And so you're in our database, I'm in our database, and we have things like contact information, education, background, estimated financials, your 401k data, what you're Googling online, and a whole bunch more.
Wow. Scary yet powerful.
Yeah, exactly. I like to think we're using our powers for good, not evil.
Yeah, that's good. So I'm assuming everybody has a social profile, Facebook, Instagram. Is the pictures and comments on there, is that part of what's aggregated or
everything?
No?
So everything online. One of our features that we just launched is called like a deep search, and you can basically, let's say I pulled up your profile on FINNY, I can hit deep search, and it'll in real time find everywhere you've ever been mentioned online and summarize that, kind of like writing a summary or a bio for you, and it's pulled in real time, and so it's updated based on anything available online today.
So, all right, this will be fun.
Yeah.
My name is Brad Johnson. There's a few, probably 100,000 of us in the US.
Yeah.
How does it know this Brad Johnson versus the 5 other Brad Johnsons that are there?
So you can find data, you can find profiles in 2 ways. One, people can find you just by running a search based off of, I want to find business owners in Kansas who are in this industry and are doing this amount of revenue or whatever it is, and they'll get a list of business owners and you'll be on that list, and they'll pull up your profile. Or people can actually look for you directly. And so when you do a person search, you can search on things like your first name, your last name, your city, your job title. But you can also just search based off your email or your LinkedIn URL. And so if I have you on LinkedIn and I want to get more information about you and actually start prospecting you, just copy your LinkedIn into FINNY, and then I can pull up your whole profile that way too.
It's like you've thought about this.
It's almost like this is premeditated.
It's like you had a thesis and went with it,
And then from the data, so one insight we learned really early on was, if you give financial advisors a database, they're going to say, okay, now what?
Yeah.
Right? So that's half the problem. And I think a lot of tools that have tried to fix this problem in the past have just given advisors the data and assumed that was the solution. But it turns out advisors don't need more homework on their plate. The last thing they need is more work to do. They actually need tools to take work off their plate. And so FINNY will create this list for them. They'll sort them based off propensity to convert. But then the last step, which is probably the biggest insight here, is we have an entire marketing automation engine as well. We can create content personalized to every recipient and then automate and send that out on your behalf too. So it becomes an end-to-end marketing engine for every advisor.
So you've mentioned business owner a few times. Is it just business owners or everyone?
No, that's just a good example.
Yeah.
It's everyone. So it's dentists, it's pharmacists, it's
So if I have a niche, I can go super deep in that niche.
Yeah.
And I could say, who are the red wine lovers in Lawrence, Kansas that also are Chiefs fans?
Exactly. And who have $1 million in assets.
Wild. Okay, so let's talk about some real world use cases.
Yeah.
How I'm assuming at this point with the valuations you have a few paying customers.
It's a few, yeah.
Okay. What are some of the best stories you've heard so far of how people have used your software to actually bring on real world clients?
Yeah, I have a few. I'd love to share these. There's one advisor we onboarded last month. He goes after stuntmen or stunt workers. The story there is his father was a stunt worker and he wanted to help his father, and he saw his father deal with income irregularities, right? And so there was never a stable cash flow. And so he, who also happens to be a stuntman on the side, built up a financial practice helping other stuntmen, specifically in Hollywood or others, financial plan and like help plan for their future and deal with those like really intricacies of being in that field. So he logs into FINNY, runs a campaign searching for people who match that criteria. And it's like, it's just, he's seeing such incredible engagement and response rates because it's so targeted and so specific. They've probably never received an email like that in the history of their careers. Like, hey, I'm a stuntman. My dad was a somewhat famous stuntman. This is how I can help you actually manage your finances.
So what's really interesting. So what's wild is I grew up in the insurance space, which was very heavily driven direct response marketing, radio, TV, seminars. And over the years, I would see advisors that did it very differently. And they, as they say, the riches are in the niches. And I had one that wrote a book specifically for high net worth divorced and gave that book to divorce attorneys. And there was another one that I'm aware of that just worked with optometrists. Mm-hmm. But they never had the technology to actually say, where do I find more of them?
That's right.
So essentially, it sounds like that's what FINNY's enabling.
That's exactly right. So, you don't have to be this. This was an example that was obviously a little bit exaggerated, but you can even be, I have an advisor in Jackson Hole, Wyoming. He just looks for prospects who just bought property in the area. And then reaches out to them with a welcome to the neighborhood message. And it's super specific. He has come up with some great tax strategies to take advantage of the Wyoming tax code. But it's exactly that, right? And so it's finding a niche, and then FINNY can power the data to actually help you find people who match that niche. But they've already done the pre-work to know how to best serve that group of people.
I feel like I could just let you keep rolling with case studies here, and probably everybody out there is going to be like, oh, okay, cool. You're, idea factory.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. I know we've got to save some time for scaling a business, which you've done very successfully in a short amount of time. But before we get off the organic growth, the marketing conversation, anything that we haven't got into that if an advisor's listening or watching out there, they'd want to know about?
I think we covered more or less everything the platform does. The only thing I'll say is we can serve really well the solo advisor, and then we can also help them scale out their business and empower as they're building out a team to leverage FINNY. And so we've served, your one solo RIA. We also work with $10, $20 billion RIA firms. And so the cool thing about FINNY is there's something for everyone, and it's more or less off the shelf. And so if you're a solo RIA and you want to get started tomorrow, you can get up and running in 15 minutes. You don't have to go through this crazy implementation timelines that a lot of these other tools might need. And so we really built it to be plug and play.
You just gave me an idea.
Yeah.
Do you have any advisors that have typically used mail houses to do live seminars or dinner seminars? Because it sounds like essentially they can create their own mail list using your firm. Do you have anybody doing that?
Tons. So advertising for webinars, seminars, dinners, events is a huge part of what people do on FINNY, especially if they're doing really niche specialty events. So if you want to do a webinar or a seminar to women venture capitalists in California, we're the best resource for you to actually find that list of people. And one thing that we actually do that I hadn't mentioned is we actually can do mailers too. So handwritten direct mailers, we can do on our platform as well, beyond just email, LinkedIn, AI voicemail, and mailers. So those are the four main modes that you can actually outbound people on the platform.
So you will actually print the mailers as well?
We have a vendor, but yes, and handwrite them.
So it looks like it's a handwritten note?
Mm-hmm. It's a robot arm with a gel pen. It's pretty crazy.
Hey, because why not?
Exactly.
Why not? Very cool. Okay, well, let's get to scaling. So as we were talking before we hit record here, one of the things I've found that just great successful advisors struggle with is how to transition from the single player game where it's all on them and they kind of hit that glass ceiling of success, start to redline out. There's not more hours in the day. So the next evolution is, how do I start to scale out my team, multiple advisors? Now I have to deal with personnel, org charts, structure. You've gone from 0 to 15 team members in just over a year.
That's right.
Let's talk about it. What's worked? What hasn't? What have you learned?
I'm still learning, I will say. So far, we've done a pretty good job at building a team, a really strong team. Our team is based in New York, and I have taken the old school approach of actually pushing for an in-person team.
Nice.
I, as a former employee of a firm, I know what I was like at work when I was in the office and when I was at home working remote. And for me, it was a bit of a different experience. And so I really enjoyed, as an entry-level worker, I really enjoyed like learning with the team and the culture that brought on. And so early days, we decided to make FINNY an in-person team despite being a tech company. So that was a bit contrarian, and I think that's paid off a lot too. But it has really significantly shortened the pool of potential people we can hire. So that was like one barrier we had to think about. But aside from that, I think the number one thing we look for is a culture fit. And so just, is this someone that you can spend 50 hours a week with and, just genuinely like enjoy their presence in their company and really get along with? And when I was in consulting and I was recruiting into consulting, the one tip or the one trick that people would tell me is the person on the other side of the interview is doing the airport test. Have you heard about this test?
No.
So the airport test is, if you guys have to be on a work trip and your flight gets delayed and you have to be at the airport with this person for 6 hours, would you be really upset? Or could you just hang with them?
Yeah.
And so everyone you want to hire has to pass the airport test.
So, I mean, you're on the Do Business, Do Life podcast.
Yeah.
Obviously, that cause is very close to my heart.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a selfish pursuit. That was one of the reasons Triad exists. Our litmus test for that is, would I break bread with you at the family dinner table, regardless of whether or not we were doing business together?
I love that, actually.
And so it's like kind of a different version of the airport.
Higher bar, though. I feel like to bring home to family, it's like a higher bar than the
That's true.
airport.
That's probably true.
That's great.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you were just married. I have 3 kids. Been married to my high school sweetheart for 20 years. So you think about that. That is a higher bar. Yeah. But eventually, I'm sure you'll be there. So that's very cool. So what else have you learned? Let's go back to the remote versus in person. And I feel like obviously COVID put a scratch in a lot of people's records. And it was almost like, I'll say in some instances, the teams revolted, the employees revolted. They're like, we're not going back. But also I found, as we've time has passed since that time period, I feel like there's this human need for connection in the workplace. So what have you learned? It's obviously made it a little tougher to build a tech company if everybody has to be centralized. But what's the positive benefits that have come out of that?
Yeah, it's been incredible. I mean, I have 2 families. I have my blood family, but then I have my work family that I actually spend more time with than my blood family at this point. And so just seeing that culture come out of that, like building these friendships and these relationships with people that you work with and you spend all this time with, but then just seeing how some of our engineers have become friends. And my co-founder was actually a bridesmaid at my wedding, and I'm going to be a bridesmaid at her wedding coming up next year. But they truly have become family, and they come to my dinners, my family dinners all the time. We actually all know each other's families, and so that's been really incredible. And I think it's really hard to do virtual. I'm not saying it's impossible, but I really think it's hard to build that level of just understanding and just that level of culture when you're trying to do it remote. Some teams have done a great job at it, but I think for us, the hack was just building that sense of like fostering community in person.
Well, I promise that has been one of the reasons you've had success. I was just we're at Future Proof. I just had a chance to have a conversation with Daniel Crosby, and that was one of the things we talked about was culture, which is definitely missing in a lot of finance. And I promise it's missing in a lot of tech startups or non-existent. It's the grind mentality. And what we talked about is culture kind of has a couple meanings, and it goes back to culture. Root word is in Latin. It's actually cultivate or grow. So you think about a team, absolutely you want that as a founder, but other root word is cult, and a good cult, right? For good, as you said, not for bad. And that is, it stems back to worship and shared beliefs and rituals. And you put those two together, you're in we're in a transient work environment. People switch jobs all the time. Like, what's going to keep them there? Community.
Exactly.
Right? So are there rituals you all do as a team? You mentioned family, but are there certain things you do to bring that together?
Absolutely. And I actually love that, because I've heard within the tech world, I've heard the say that like the best founders of tech companies are actually like cult leaders essentially, and they've been able to build cults amongst their employees and have a cult-like following. And I really prescribe to that notion. And so I think when an employee joins a startup, they're taking a risk on the idea, but more so they're taking a risk on the founders. And so this applies to anyone, not just a tech founder, but anyone who's looking to scale a business. You need to instill belief in yourself that you're going to be able to execute on the vision that you're telling them that you're going to achieve, because they're just pinning themselves to your wagon, right? And so they want to believe that you're going to be able to take this business to the next level at every single time, and they're going to grow with your success. So one of the things that I did, it's going to sound a little crazy, but I moved into my office. So I live in my office, which is crazy.
You went with the Elon plan, just set a cot over in the corner?
Yeah, it's a little bit more than a cot, but we have this loft space in Soho in Manhattan, and the joke is that it's a massive open space, and there's 2 conference rooms, and one of the conference rooms I've turned into my bedroom. I've lived in my office for the last 14 months now, and now actually next week we're growing up, and I'm moving into my own adult apartment, and we're moving into a bigger office too. But I think as insane as that
Wait,
sounds,
is your spouse invited to? Okay, cool. Just making sure.
my spouse lives in the office with me as well. Thank God he understands. But I think
he does not work. He does not work at the company.
No, he does not work at the company. That would be a recipe for disaster. Some spouses can do it. Some married people start amazing companies. I mean, I was talking to Liz and Doug for it's like they're incredible, but I could not do that. It would be a recipe for disaster.
I'm with you on that one too. My wife would not enjoy that experience.
Yeah, it would be like the worst idea. But anyways, one of the things that we did to foster that sense of like cult almost is, by definition of me living there, I was the first one in, last one out every single day, because I woke up there and fell asleep there. And I think, as crazy as it sounds, a lot of our early employees kind of looked up to that and realized how serious I was to the personal commitment I was making to the company, and that I think inspired them and showed them how much I believed in it as well. Like I wasn't just like leading by saying I was doing all these things, but I was actually doing it and committing to it.
Yeah, one of the things we talk about at Triad is be your word. And it's one thing for a founder to say, this is really important, team. It's another thing for them to just see the actions and let those speak for themselves. So
exactly.
It shows like you kind of burn the boats behind you, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, exactly.
So, I'm just picturing your husband like walking out in a robe with a coffee and like looking around and seeing people work at the office.
So I'll tell you a funny story. I feel like both my husband and my CTO will take like a die that I'm sharing the story, but it's fine. I had, I think last year, Miami Future Proof or one of these other conferences. I was gone for the whole week. It was a Friday evening. And I was landing pretty late. It was like 8 or 9 p.m. on a Friday, and I was coming back into my office / my apartment. And my husband was waiting at the door with roses, to say that he missed me so much. And my CTO was in the back having a hackathon right behind him, and they had just ordered a pizza. And they hadn't realized that like at that time I was coming home, and so they were dying of laughter. It was one of the most hilarious like interactions where you have my husband with a bouquet of roses, my CTO like hacking away with like his pizza, and he's like, I'll get out of your hair, don't worry, and like proceeds to leave. But it was just a hilarious instance. It's one of those things.
I mean, you were made for Do Business, Do Life podcast. I mean, perfect guest.
That's
true integration right there.
Exactly.
Well, very cool. Well, I know our time here is short. Anything else, like if we circle back to the scaling, obviously you've created a really cool culture that seems like is attracting people. Anything else you'd share for advisors out there trying to replicate that success?
It's a good question. Some of the best advice I got from Y Combinator was hire slow, fire fast. Mm-hmm. It sounds cutthroat, but it will save you so much time, money, and resources. And when you're a business owner, the number one resource you have is your time. And so it's so time intensive to hire and then to onboard. And making those types of mistakes can be very costly. And so taking your time to bring on the right people, but then right away, if they're not the right fit, don't just try to drag it on and just, try to finish that as early as possible. B players will hire C players who hire D players. And I've seen that in my friends' companies be very true. And so just keep the threshold of talent really, really high and don't just hire out of necessity, which is really tempting to. Right now, my company is 15 people. We need to be at 30 tomorrow.
So you're going to have to hire a little faster.
We're going to have to hire a little faster. But the reason we haven't just jumped there is because we're keeping the threshold for talent really, really high. And so we're taking in a lot of pain right now just by virtue of like being understaffed, but we're being really thoughtful about the people we bring on.
Well, I subscribe to that thesis fully. We've seen that, we've felt that at Triad, we've messed it up along the way. How hard was it for you? I'm assuming at this point you've had to let somebody go. How hard was the first one? Was that tough for you? I mean, it's easy to say, hard to do.
It was terrible. There's no other way of saying it. Like, it was truly terrible. This is my first time that I'm a business owner. I was an employee before, and so I've never had to have these conversations. I've never even given feedback until this company, and so I've never had to have those hard conversations. I mean, I was on the receiving end of feedback, but I've never had to been the one to dole it out, and that's really a skill. It's a skill that I'm working on. Oftentimes I'm hiring people that are older than me, and just that creates like an interesting dynamic. And so it's a skill that I actively am trying to work on, which is like give good feedback to everyone that I work with, and then have those tough conversations when it's time to. So I don't have any words of wisdom there. I'm still learning.
Well, you know what I've picked up already in this conversation is your humility. You're like, I'm still figuring it out. I'm still learning it. It's like we say, you've never arrived at Triad. You're a lifelong learner. And I love that. I mean, same thing. Like, I learn something new every day. And I think the founders I've seen with the most success have some form of humility, and the team respects that. It's not like, I'm perfect, I've got it all figured out. It's like, I'm here with you too. I'm here to grow. I'm here to learn. So I can promise you that shows up in an amazing way to the team. I
really appreciate that. Thank you. That means a lot. So I appreciate you saying that.
And obviously you're all about back to Y Combinator and some of the advice you've gotten. So it's almost like I must do this for the company to arrive where we need to go. So it's kind of like I have no other choice but to take that up.
Yeah, I think Y Combinator, me and my two co-founders are all first-time founders. This is all our first time really doing this. And so I think Y Combinator taught us these really amazing frameworks for building a company. And more specifically, they taught us what not to do. So what pitfalls to avoid as a founder. They definitely don't have like a recipe for success. There's no path, there's no journey that's deterministic that if you do this plus this, you'll get to success. But there are certain things you can avoid doing, like, hiring too fast or scaling too quickly when the team's not ready. And so Y Combinator has been an awesome resource just for us as a framework to grow, for sure.
You shared one, which is amazing.
Yeah.
Are there others that just come to mind of here's what not to do or here's what to do?
I think like number one, Y Combinator's slogan is build something people want. It sounds so silly and so like reductionist, but ultimately what they'll tell you and what they will ask you every single day for the first 6 months is, do you have 10 people that love what you do? And it sounds silly. I'm like, yeah, I have 100 customers. They're like, no. Do you have 10 people that love what you do? They would quit their job and like stop their business if you stop working with them. Like, you have 10 people that love what you do. And would use those words. And just like that framework of customer obsession has really like informed a lot of like the way that we work. And so for the first $1 million of revenue, me and my co-founder onboarded every single client live. We did spend an hour with every single one. And we did regular feedback sessions every 2 weeks with every single one. So for the first 8 months, our entire calendars were just talking to customers. I wasn't talking to investors. I wasn't doing anything else. I was just talking to customers, literally from like 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. That was my entire calendar. And I think that helped us a ton, and we've taken it to an extreme. Obviously, people have to run their business, but just being customer obsessed and really, really understanding when it comes to wealth managers, understanding what pain points you're really solving for your clients, so then you're able to replicate that for others in a really great way. I think is a great recipe.
Mm-hmm. So good. I love that. I believe it was Jeff Bezos that coined customer obsession, or did he just borrow it? You might know better than me. You're in that world.
I might be stealing it from him.
Yeah. No, we call it member obsession. We subscribe to that fully. And the thing is, easy to say, hard to do. You have to be fully committed to actually deliver on that. So do you have 10 customers now is that how did you track that? Like what was your metric they love? Like 10 out of 10, 1 out of 10, like how did you figure that out?
Just ask them. For 10, it's pretty easy to get to. I mean, this doesn't scale. We do a lot of like customer usage, but I think a lot of companies, especially early stage, will like overcomplicate this. We'll have these customer dashboards and be like, our usage is ticking up 5%. And it's like, oh, well, have you talked to them today?
Did you call them?
Did you call them? Yeah. Was it like one of the, I'm going to butcher this, but there's some famous founder, I think it's maybe McDonald's or someone who one day of every month we'll actually go and work at one of the stores. And I don't think it's McDonald's, but I'm forgetting exactly who it is.
I know. I've heard the same story, but it's slipping me as well.
I'm blanking out on who it is, but they will.
Well, actually, I know the Savannah Bananas, who have blown up the baseball team.
Yeah.
I think Jesse Cole's the founder. He will literally answer the phone when people call for tickets.
Exactly.
So, I mean, there's an example right there.
Exactly. And so I think like the founders and the executives that do that, they just learn so much more. Oh, I'll tell you, Jeff Bezos very famously was in a meeting once and talking about like customer success and support. And they were showing these metrics that our average wait time to call to talk to support is 1 minute. But then there was a slew of complaints they were getting that it was a 20, 30-minute wait time. And so the metrics were not adding up to the complaints. And so in a meeting full of his executive team, they were claiming that they got it down to a minute. And he was like, this doesn't add up. He said, everyone be quiet. I'm going to call our support number and I'm going to put it on speaker. And he was on hold for 20 minutes. And like, it's just like, just check. Just do the thing. Don't just rely on the metrics and what everyone is telling you. As a founder, it's your responsibility to actually just like talk to the customers, do the thing, test the thing, and make sure that it's working.
I love that. Just jump in the trenches.
Yeah.
That's very cool. Well, and this time has flown. What an awesome conversation. Thank you so much for carving out the time at Future Proof. I just have one final question, and I would love to hear your definition, although we've heard a little bit already. What does do business, do life mean to you?
That's a really good question. I mean, I think from just our brief conversation, I think you've seen that my business is my life and my life is my business. I've maybe taken it to an extreme, but I've taken this business, it's 100% of my life, but it's also, I've integrated it with my personal life too, and I've built up a great support system, and my colleagues have become my best friends, and my best friends know everything there is to know about my work, and I've met my team, and so it's just, for me, it just means 100% integrated life and work. Maybe not for everyone, but it works for me, and as long as I'm having fun in both my life and my work, and I'm doing something right.
Yeah. Hey, your husband's still bringing flowers?
Yeah.
So you must be doing something
exactly.
right.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for the time. I'm
Thank you so
excited
much.
to follow FINNY's journey and see what you guys build.
I appreciate that. Thank you. This was
All right.
great.
Take care.
Cool.